It was 1933 in the French city of Le Mans when a crime so shocking and savage sent the city spiraling into upheaval. Christine and Leah Papin were quiet and dutiful live-in housemaids to Lancelin's middle-class family when they brutally murdered Madame Lancelin and her daughter Genevieve on a cold winter's night on February the 2nd. The Papin sisters came from a troubled family in Le Mans. Their mother was Clémence Deray and their father was Gustave Papin. Although there were rumours that Clémence was having an affair with her boss, Gustave loved her. In October 1901, when she became pregnant, Gustave married Clémence and baby Emilia Papin arrived in February of 1902. But Gustave continued to suspect that Clémence was still having an affair. When he announced to her that he was taking a new job in another city and that the family needed to move there, she fell into a raging fit and threatened to commit suicide rather than leave Le Mans. The relationship became progressively more volatile. Clémence had little affection for Gustave and Emilia. Seeking any form of comfort, Gustave turned to alcohol. When Emilia was 9 or 10 years old, Clémence sent her to the Bon Pasteur Catholic orphanage. It would later surface that her father had raped her. Emilia Papin later joined the Catholic convent and became a nun. The other 2 children Clémence had given birth to had been sent away at an early age. Christine was considered the more difficult one. She was born in 1905 and was the middle child of the family. Soon after she was born, Christine's parents gave her to her father's sister, who was happy to have her. Christine remained with her aunt for 7 years, after which she entered a Catholic orphanage. Although Christine wanted to join the convent, her mother would not allow it and later placed her into employment. With an average intelligence, her personality was stronger and more open than Leah's. Her employers had reported that she could be insolent at times. Nonetheless, she was a hard worker and was known as a good cook. Leah was the shy one. Born in 1911, she was the youngest of the 3 girls. Leah was of slightly lower intelligence than her sister, and she was introverted, quiet and obedient. From infancy, Leah grew up with her mother's brother until he died, and then she too went to a Catholic orphanage until she was 15 years of age. Christine and Leah Papin were now of age to work. In 1926, they were fortunate to land a domestic living job together in Le Mans, in the home of a retired lawyer, René Lancelin, and his wife Leonie and their adult daughter Genevieve. Christine served as the family cook while Leah cleaned the house. The Papin sisters were by most accounts good girls and model housemaids. Every Sunday they dressed up and attended church, and they had reputations as being diligent workers with proper behaviour. Known to be rather unsocial, Christine and Leah preferred their own company over that of others. Each day they had a 2-hour break after lunch, but instead of going out to enjoy the day, they stayed in their bedroom. By 1933, the Papin sisters had been with the Lancelins for 6 years. Christine was 27 years old and Leah was 21. On February the 2nd of that year, Mrs. Lancelin and her daughter arrived home around 5:30 to a mostly dark house. It was the second time in a week that the malfunctioning iron caused the electrical fuse to blow while Christine was ironing. Oddly, the iron had just returned that day from the repairman, who said he could find nothing wrong with it. When Christine informed Mrs. Lancelin that the iron broke again, the madame was angry and a dispute broke out between the madame, Christine and Genevieve. Christine snapped. At the top of the stairs on the first floor landing, Christine lunged at Genevieve and tore her eyes out with her fingers. Leah quickly joined in the struggle and grabbed Mrs. Lancelin. Christine ordered her to gouge out the madame's eyes. Then Christine ran downstairs to the kitchen to get a knife and a hammer. She proceeded back upstairs where the sisters worked together to bludgeon and slice the mother and daughter. The rabid sisters also used a heavy pewter pitcher that sat on a table at the top of the stairs to bash in the heads of the Lancelin ladies. Experts estimate that the incident lasted about 30 minutes. But in the end, the maids had violently slaughtered both women. Mr. Lancelin and his son-in-law arrived at the home between 6:30 and 7 p.m. The door was bolted from the inside and the men were unable to enter, although they knew someone was home. The house was completely dark except for a faint glow coming from the upper level. It seemed highly suspicious, so they went to the police station for help. After entering the house, the police climbed the stairs and found a grisly scene. Most of the injuries were on the faces and the heads of Mrs. Lancelin and her daughter. However, the daughter's legs and buttocks revealed deep knife lacerations. Their faces were completely demolished beyond recognition. Teeth had scattered about the room, and one of Genevieve's eyes lay on the top stair. Investigators later found the other eye under her body. Hidden within the folds of the Madame's neck scarf were both of her eyes. Madame Lancelin was lying on her back with her legs apart and only one shoe on. Genevieve's body was facing down. Next to her right hip lay a bloody kitchen knife with a dark handle. Blood covered the entire scene and had even splattered the walls 2 meters above the bodies. The police proceeded to search the rest of the house. In their minds, they all wondered if the killer had done the same thing to the sisters. But when the investigators ascended to the upper level where the maid's room was, the door was locked. A locksmith went to the scene to unlock the door, and when the police opened it, they found the girls in bed together. They had washed their hands in the downstairs kitchen sink, gone back upstairs to the room and undressed, and then they crawled into the same bed. Next to the bed on a chair lay the bloody hammer with bits of hair still stuck to it. Police asked them what happened and the sisters immediately confessed to the crime. Later, they were arrested and taken into custody. Christine became distressed and exhibited desperate fits when the police separated the girls. She wanted nothing more than to be with Leah. The court appointed 3 doctors to administer psychological evaluations to the sisters to determine whether or not they were sane. Christine was indifferent toward the world and she indicated that she had no attachments except to Leah. The doctors also reported that Christine's affection for her sister was based on family devotion. They did not detect any kind of sexual context within their relationship, as some people had suggested. Eventually, the authorities allowed a meeting between the sisters. However, Christine reportedly behaved and spoke in a way that implied a sexual relationship. On the other hand, Leah looked up to Christine as a big sister or mother figure, and she was the more introverted and shy one of the two. She too had a deep emotional connection to Christine. The evaluation came back stating that the sisters had no pathological mental disorders and no family history of such. The doctors deemed the girls completely sane and indicated that their unusually close union caused the girls to act out together, both equally responsible for the murder. At the trial, the jurors took only 40 minutes to deliberate. Of course, they found Christine and Leah Papin guilty. Leah received a 10-year prison sentence. Christine was to face the guillotine, although that sentence was commuted to life in prison. The brutal double murder enraged the city and shocked all of France. There had never been so much brutality in a murder like this. Many people began to wonder why 2 housemaids, who by all accounts were decent girls and had been treated well in their domestic positions, could possess such deep hatred as to rip the Lancelins' eyes out with their bare fingers. The murder itself was heinous, but the gouging of the eyes and the smashing of their heads was an act of animal savagery. Psychotherapists, philosophers, writers and others began to chime in with their theories. Some intellectuals sympathized with the girls and could empathize with their class struggle. They saw the crime as a reflection of the oppressive class divisions, poor working conditions and prejudice. Others believed strongly that because the girls had worked in a decent employment with a kind family, ate the same meals the rest of the family ate and had a generous monthly salary, there was no logical motive for such a crime. Was it something deeply rooted in the childhood of the sisters? Some say the girls were starved of love and affection, but were they? They spent their formative years away from their parents' instability, with family members who supposedly loved them. Although they did eventually have to go to a Catholic orphanage, there is no evidence that they suffered or were not cared for. At the trial, a 4th doctor testified. The girls could certainly not be normal. he proposed that the relationship between Christine and Leia was a complete merger of personalities, and that Leia had lost her own identity to the dominant personality of Christine. In essence, there was no Christine and there was no Leia. The killer was really the joint personality of the two, a third identity. Psychotherapists around the world scrambled for a diagnosis.
The two sisters seem to suffer from what is called shared paranoid disorder. This condition tends to occur in small groups or pairs who become isolated from the world. They often lead an intense, inward-looking existence with a paranoid view of the outside world. It is also typical in shared paranoid disorder that one partner dominates the other, and the Papin sisters seem to be a perfect example of this.
Without her sister, Christine did not fare well in prison and deteriorated dramatically. She exhibited bouts of madness and became severely depressed and despondent, eventually refusing to eat at all. Prison officials transferred her to a mental institution. However, she continued to starve herself until she died in May of 1937. Leia Papin, on the other hand, demonstrated exemplary behavior and served only 8 years of her 10-year sentence. In 1941, she became a free woman. She lived with her mother in Nantes, France, under an assumed name and worked in hotel housekeeping. On some accounts, she died in 1982. However, in 2000, while making a film In Search of the Papin Sisters, Claude Ventura claimed to have found Leia living in a hospice center in France. The woman had suffered a stroke and was partially paralyzed and unable to speak. She passed away in 2001. Questions asked in 1933 about the crime are still being asked today. Whether things about society, flaws in the social structure, callousness in the religious orphanages, or too much oppression and persecution that made them do it? Did society as a whole need to change? Whether or not the Le Mans double murder resulted in any sort of societal shift in paradigm is uncertain. What is certain, though, is that nearly a century later, the savage murders that took place at 6 Rue Brugière on February 2, 1933, still reverberate throughout Le Mans.